Sport Business. Global Sports Intelligence.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Sport Business Podcast, getting you up to speed with the stories powering the global sports industry. I'm Catherine Davies, America's Bureau Chief of Sport Business, and I'm the host of the Sport Business Weekly podcast. Now, our media team have all recently landed back home from 3 days down in Monaco, where we were attending the 2025 Sportel Global Sports Media and Tech Convention. And over the next hour, we'll be bringing you a roundup of the nuggets of the latest news that we unearthed and the stories that we landed during the days and nights at the market. I'm here with fellow attendees Martin Ross, our global news editor, Jonathan Rest, global news reporter, and Joseph Perry, our new editor of Sport Business Media, who is making his debut on the podcast. Welcome to all three of you. How's the recovery going from 3 hard days at the coalface?
Yeah, I'm a broken man today. It's really hard work going to Sportel. It's very hard to explain that to friends and family that spending 2 or 3 days in Monte Carlo is difficult, but it's long days. It's, 4 hours sleep a night, but it's great fun. But at one point I had to neck a bottle of Iron Brew before we went to the Irish pub to drop off our bags just to keep me going into the small hours. So yeah, it was great. Really enjoyed it. But yeah, hard work.
My 6-year-old welcomed me back by asking how my holiday was, because when you tell him you're going to the south of France to drink it. But I think for us, the hard work starts now, because we have to kind of work hard to substantiate what all the things that we heard and whether it was true or not. So it might be done for other people, but I feel like Sportel's just started now for us in the news and media team.
And Joe, how was it for you? Your second time at Sportel, but first time as the new Sport Business Media editor.
Yeah, there's nothing like Sportel after a couple of years out of the industry to help you get stuck back in. It is a bit of a hamster wheel, this industry, as we all know. So having everyone there in the same room really helps. And I think even in the 2 years, there's a big change. It's nice to see that there's signs, shoots of optimism from lots of the people I spoke to. We're not quite in the doom and gloom we were when I left this industry in 2023, and hopefully I don't bring it back with me.
Well, Joe, I'd heard as well that this year's edition was very fruitful for a lot of the participants, perhaps a sign that the market is reviving around the world. And so I think we should get right down to business. I'm going to open the floor up to the three of you. What was the biggest talking point from this year's Sportel for you three?
I mean, I think undoubtedly it would be the Champions League, Europa League, Conference League rights tenders sent out recently by UC3 and Relevant Football Partners. All the big important discussions there were taking place in the relevant meeting rooms. Oh, that's a good pun, that, actually. So, yeah, I mean, various strands of this. Frank did a really great piece, which lots of attendees and those not there were digesting on Monday as to what it all meant. We can talk about, I suppose, what the big points resulting from that were. One being the fact that it's 4 years. That is, by all accounts, nod to maybe any competition concerns in Europe. But once you've done 4 years, then you only have 2 years left of the mandate. So it creates the interesting question around where you go from there. It's unlikely to do 2-year rollovers, clearly. So is that an indication of potential extension beyond that? Obviously, that's not in place, but it gives you maybe a flavour of the strategy going forward very long term. And then also the question was raised a lot about who could pull this global package off from various points in terms of financially, but then also logistically, if it was shown globally, excluding the English language rights in the US, then can a Netflix or an Amazon logistically pull it off, in terms of languages, commentary, editorial, question around selling rights on or not, which was asked by many, any holdbacks. So yeah, plenty of discussion around not just who the bidders might be, but also the impact on everything else.
Yeah, it was the starting point of every conversation, wasn't it? Whether it was in the kind of networking and the bars or just the kind of one-on-one meetings, people were kind of asking, what does this mean for me? And not even in the 5 markets where UC3 and Relevant Football Partners have gone to market now, but the knock-on effect of early next year when tenders start going out in other parts of the world, and what is that global picture going to look like? A lot of the conversations you mentioned there, Martin, you're having a conversation with them and you're starting with a long list of who could possibly take this global package, and then you start whittling them down by going, well, it's not really one for them, it's not their strategy. Does it make sense for someone to go that big when you don't have the English language rights in the US? So yeah, it really was the talk of Monte Carlo for a couple of days, certainly in the conversations we had.
I think what Martin and John say is spot on. It was definitely something that we were asking about and being asked about ourselves all the time in the Grimaldi and the surrounding bars. One of the things that stood out to me was there is a huge difference in the valuations that people have for these rights. Of course, it's all speculation at this point, but some people think the rights to that global package of first pick games on a Tuesday could be as much as €1.5 billion per season. Some people think more like 500 million. So there's a huge range of expectations. And I think that points to what John was saying, with no one quite being sure who these rights are for. We know, obviously, from the packaging that they're designed to draw the big global streamers. But when you dial down into the specifics of these rights, which is what Frank Dunn has done in his wonderful Sport Business Media piece, then you see actually these rights might work better for some than others. So there's a lot that remains to be seen. But for the nuances, do check out Frank's piece.
Kind of sticking with Relevant, there's the story that broke at the end of Sportel really on Tuesday night was the game that LaLiga were hoping to stage in Miami between Barcelona and Villarreal had been suspended or cancelled. I'm not quite sure what the terminology was in the Spanish press compared to the UK press, Catherine, but I think suspended was one way of putting it. And I think you were there on Wednesday morning and saw the La Liga stand had cleared out. I think they all rushed home to kind of sort out what's next. I think that came at the right time for those that didn't want to talk about it because everyone had pretty much gone home by then.
Well, full credit to Javier Tebas, president of La Liga, because I did the keynote interview with him on Tuesday afternoon, and he spoke gamely of the match and said it was going to be a fantastic way of increasing La Liga's fan base in the US and really broadening exposure of the league in the Americas. And I'm pretty sure that he knew full well at the time that Relevant had pulled the plug or was about to pull the plug. And as you say, in the US media, it was announced as postponed, whereas in the Spanish media, they said canceled. So I'm sure there'll be a lot more on that in the very near future, won't there? But speaking about La Liga, there's another interesting piece of news that Mr. Tebas said to me just before the interview, and I'm not sure it's been out there yet, but La Liga have put their domestic media rights on the Spanish market pretty close to a year prior to when they plan to put them on market. Now, it's not the entire package, but it excludes the free-to-air match and the second division and the clips. But the pay TV rights, any other rights packages that may be in this tender, we haven't seen it yet, but they are apparently on the market now. And bids are expected to be in by November 18th, which is the deadline for Champions League bids. What do you make of that? What do you think their strategy is in doing that?
I mean, it's not the first time he's maybe tried to or not the first time a big European league will try and jump ahead of any competition. Yeah, I quite like it. It's quite cheeky. Why not? I mean, I suppose everybody's free to go to market when they want. There's another tender. I mean, around at the moment being the World Cup rights tender in Italy, which I suppose, given the timeline, kind of has to go soon for its 2026 World Cup. But yeah, I'm all for it. Let's keep each other on our toes. Does it include the Horeca rights, Catherine?
That wasn't clear. I heard it excluded free-to-air, clips, and second division. It may well include Horeca, but Horeca. Pubs and
I
clubs.
only say that because I wanted an excuse to mention. I never knew what Horeca stands for, but I do now. I'm sure one of you guys might.
Well, you know what? I didn't either, but the HO is for hotels, the RE is for restaurantes, and the CA is for something else. I'm not sure.
Cafes, I think. It's
Cafes, you know more than I do.
There we go.
Pubs and clubs.
Yeah.
That's much easier, pubs and clubs.
Yeah.
Shall we say a prayer for our Spanish broadcast colleagues who we picked up whispers suddenly cancelled lunch reservations on Tuesday, just as Javier was about to take to the stage. Not only do they now have to deal with a UC3 relevant tender, they also have to cast a night of the domestic rights. So a very busy autumn and Christmas period for them.
That may be why their stand was empty. I was there all morning on Wednesday and not a soul in the stand. It was the emptiest stand in the whole place. So they're off back to Madrid and they're very busy, aren't they? And that's, well, a couple of tenders we've talked about now, and there's two more that we're going to discuss because there's been a lot of news about them. The AFC tender and the Conmebol. John, do you want to start with Conmebol? Because we heard a lot of news about the Conmebol Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana, the top tier and second tier club championships in the Conmebol region, which is South America, the 10 South American countries. You heard some interesting nuggets of news there, didn't you?
Yeah, it's more kind of just interesting when you're not based in those markets to catch up with people and hear about the dynamics of it and what's going on there. Martin wrote a story a couple of weeks ago on the tender being out there, and I think the deadline is November the 10th, Martin, if I'm not wrong, on the bids. But, there is a Central America package, obviously, but no teams competing. So the real interest is the Brazil and then the Spanish-speaking South America. And again, going back to the UC3 global package, different people you speak to have totally different opinions, don't they, on they're speaking to the same people as us, and yet no one can quite define exactly what's going to happen in these. Brazil, we understand, we expect, just given the competition in the market, is going to be very competitive and will be a great result, people say, for IMG and Conmebol. And then you've got Spanish-speaking South America, where anything could happen, really. I mean, I think conversations, Catherine, myself and you had with people was that it was going to be tough and it will go down, in the last few months. And then suddenly there's been a bit of energy in that market now, and people think that actually there's going to be a really good showing in that region. You've got, ESPN wanting to kind of be aggressive to retain their position. No one really knows what's going on with Paramount in that part of the world. They've obviously spent huge since the Skydance deal in the US, but are they going to continue to want to be part of that position? So yeah, you've got, I think, a really exciting couple of weeks in that market, and to see what comes out of it. But I think, again, we all have these conversations with people and no one can quite put their finger on what's going to happen, but I think it's quite positive.
Yeah, I heard that in Brazil, as you say, that it's understood that there will be competition for the rights. And I spoke to a couple of Brazilian executives who weren't sure about whether there would be an increase in the Spanish-speaking territories. But then when I spoke to some people in Argentina and elsewhere, they think there's going to be tremendous competition. And the one reason is the understanding that Fox is going to reemerge in the market. And I do understand that Fox can bid for the rights even as early as November 10th, despite the fact that they don't have a Fox Sports outlet in Latin America at the moment because of the conditions of the merger with Disney 4 years ago. No, was it 5 years ago? And really, well, one person said to me that if they want to get back in the market, the Copa Libertadores is the must-have. It's the biggest property. And if they want to get back into pan-regional in Latin America, they need to have Copa Libertadores. And they can bid. They have the FX channel. I think they still have a channel called Star Plus. They have some operations there. So they can technically bid, but they don't have a Fox Sports outlet. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But it's clear that it is the property that will make them relevant. And so I understand that they will be bidding for that. And then there's Paramount, and Paramount has sold its channels or some of its properties in Argentina. The new owner of the Telefe, the big Paramount channel in Argentina, was just announced yesterday, an Argentinian businessman, and they don't really have any experience in sport. And then Chilevisión in Chile is in the process of being sold, I believe. So it's all up in the air with Paramount. We're not quite sure where they are in the rest of Latin America. And then who knows, maybe an Amazon or somebody else will come in.
Yeah, and the other big, it's a confederation bonanza at the moment, quite frankly, with the UEFA clubs RFP, double RFP, with potentially the UEFA national teams. That's the next step. Will that be a new deal with CA11? Will that be taken to market? Let's wait and see. CAF is closing on its deal, most likely with IMG. Iris is also bid for that. And then we have the AFC rights tender, which makes you think, what on earth is going on at CONCACAF? Should they have to join the party soon? Tender for AFC is an agency tender as opposed to a tender for broadcasters like Conmebol. It is another one that was widely discussed at Sportel. We understand that the current plan is to go to market December 15th with bids on January 28th. Asia Football Group is the incumbent. There will be a lot of interest in this. And I think initially it was planned maybe to go to market earlier this year, but AFC wanted to give potential bidders an idea and a flavour of maybe at least what the lineup of bidders would be for the 2031 Asia Cup. The Asia Cup is the kind of cornerstone of the AFC rights. There's a lot of bidders for that, including Australia, India, Indonesia, UAE, Korea. So let's see. That is the next cab off the rank after all these other confederation tenders are completed and take place. It'll be interesting to see what team does. Obviously, this could be a big one. If they could get it alone or with somebody else, it would be a big boost to their football business post UEFA. So yeah, it was certainly another hot topic of conversation football-wise for sure.
There seems to be, on that AFC, Martin, a few people I spoke to, and I think probably the same with you guys, it does seem that joint bids might be the way forward there for some of those that want to take that contract. And I just wonder if that's just an indication of how tough a market kind of Asia is at the moment for rights trading, that you kind of need the support of someone else. Been someone again this morning who, off the back of Sportel, they're saying the same thing, that it seems to be people looking to pair up with the best proposal, especially if minimum guarantees, etc., are going to be needed.
Yeah, I mean, let's see if there is a minimum guarantee or not requirement or desire for one. I think these kind of confederation tender rights have often attracted, and we think back to Conmebol and IMG and Perform that teamed up on FC Diaz. Because of the scope of the rights, I think quite often you will get alliances or joint bids. So we wouldn't be too surprised to see that this time around again.
Well, I think there was another topic that you, Martin, had unearthed about Iris Sports Media and how they have picked up a new rights package that came as a surprise to me, certainly. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, I'm not taking full credit for this. I certainly have an assist from Maria and an assist from John on this. But yeah, we did at Sportel find out that Iris is in the process of signing off a long-term deal to distribute the rights to Giro d'Italia, which is a big win for Iris, one of the three cycling's big ones, if you like. It would be from 2026 onwards, and pending full sign-off, they would replace IMG, who has distributed the rights since 2013 after taking over from Rai Trade. Pretty significant in that the co-founders of Iris, Joris Francini, Floris Weiss and Luca Baldanza, previously of IMG, all used to have an involvement in either winning that IMG contract initially, or in the case of Luca, I think account managing the property at the time. A bit like the FIVB Volleyball World Rights that Iris recently won, previously with IMG, which they worked on before. So yeah, we did a story yesterday on this on sportbusiness.com. So all the details are there if you want to have a read of it. We expect it to be announced certainly in a couple of weeks. And it also tells us maybe a little bit about where Iris is 2 years on from launching at and around a Sportel. They now will have Giro. They will have had, obviously, Club World Cup sales in Africa this year. They have the Volleyball World. That's kind of the ones they came into the business with Live Golf, PFL and others. So they're starting to amass a sort of a rights portfolio that, of course, doesn't take them into contention with the big agencies, but there's a lot of traction there. Maybe in contrast, if we look back a year, Two Circles was the chat of the town, having bought Spring Media, and how much were they going to sort of jostle for position. I mean, overall, it's been quite a quiet year in terms of rights acquisition, sales deals they've got over the line. There's been Top 14, clearly the big one that we talk about a lot, UWCL, Grand Slam Track, which we don't need to go into full details of that sort of financial implosion that has happened there at Grand Slam Track. They expect, and I interviewed them this week at Sportel, Two Circles expect to represent those rights next year if it happens. Then there's also some Spring Media ones, federation type deals, gymnastics and wrestling, taekwondo that they sort of brought into the takeover deals. I got more of a sense from speaking to Two Circles that, clearly media rights trading is important. They're still pretty more widely known, I think, and recognized as a very strong sort of sponsorship sales agency. And a big part of the media pie is Stay Live, which is an OTT services provider in the same way as, kind of Endeavour streaming type offering to the market. They've done 12 deals in the last year for that since the takeover, but it's hard. It's hard to make money from that revenue stream. And I think maybe I see that more as a kind of building it into that kind of 360 offering that they have now for clients. So yeah, the Giro one and Iris was quite a big story in its own for cycling, frankly, but then also maybe teaches us a bit about where Iris is going. And as an agency, we will be doing an interview with Joris Francini in a few weeks, I think. So more to come on that.
Well, segueing from cycling, let's look at another sport that is in the Olympics. John, there was a lot going on. The IOC were at Sportel. They were actively negotiating deals for the next cycle. What did you hear about them?
Yeah, they've got a couple of deals, I think, that are almost on the verge of kind of completion. I don't think they're quite inking the contract, but I think LATAM being one, New Zealand being one, although I believe there were reports in New Zealand recently that Sky had got that package. The two interesting ones, the big ones really for them, are India and the Middle East. India in particular, it's never really been a kind of moving the needle for the IOC there, but with the introduction of cricket for LA 28 has obviously created a lot of excitement. To the extent that we did a story, I think Imran did the story early this year, but when the IOC went to market, that they were looking potentially at a 2-cycle deal. So it would start 26 and cover kind of 2 Summer Olympics in 28 and 32. The latest we've heard is there's no guarantee that they're actually going to sell the full 2 cycles. The option was to bid for, 1 cycle or additionally both. There is no guarantee cricket's going to be on the Olympic programme in 2032, albeit it is going to be in Brisbane, Australia. So the chances would be quite strong that T20 cricket would survive for another games. But there is no guarantee. So what does that do for a broadcaster's appetite in the Indian subcontinent to put down a large cheque for 2 games? So yeah, that's a really interesting one to watch out for. I mean, whether it will be done by Milan Cortina in February is perhaps unlikely and perhaps unnecessary as well. I don't know. There's too many broadcasters in India concerned too much about biathlon and tobogganing. I don't know. And then the other one being MENA as well. That's a be-in deal at the moment, or ended after Paris. Again, that's a big market for them. So yeah, they're the 2 big juicy ones. I think the India one's going to be really interesting how that comes out.
Yeah, John, on toboggan being broadcast in India, yeah, maybe don't hold your breath. I mean, it could be done before then, but funnily enough, the last 2 Winter Olympic Games, I believe, were streamed either on the Olympic Channel or Olympics.com. So yeah, it's clearly not a priority in terms of that deal. Broadcasters going into these tenders can bid for 2 cycles or can bid for 4 cycles. So there is that option. 36, which we've talked about in a previous podcast, potentially being in India, has been kept out of that equation. They're not going to be able to bid for 36. The other ones that you mentioned there, I mean, Sub-Saharan Africa is the other one to talk about, which is a big one. The tender is out. Bids have been invited fairly recently. Obviously, Canal Plus recent move in terms of multi-choice, etc., has changed the dynamic there a little bit. We expect LATAM soon. And yeah, New Zealand, we expect Sky. I mean, TVNZ have already come out, I think, and said that they haven't got the rights. So yeah, fair amount of movement on the IOC side and some announcements coming soon, we think.
Well, great insights there, Martin. And let's move on over to Poland, where I believe you've had some discussions with the Ekstraklasa and you found out the latest with them. What's new over there in Poland?
Yeah, this is a tender that will be launching next year. The Ekstraklasa wants to get wrapped up by the end of next year. It's for the rights from 27-28 onwards. Canal Plus is long-time incumbent of the domestic rights for Ekstraklasa since the 90s, I think, with TVP, the public broadcaster, showing 1 game per week free. The current domestic rights contract's worth 325 million zlotys a year, which is 77 million euros a year at the moment. As it stands, that's for rights and also production. That was up 30% on the previous deal, and before that was up 60%. So I interviewed the Ekstraklasa CEO, Marcin Anemuki at Sportel to ask him about whether they were targeting an increase, how they could look to encourage more competition in a market where obviously Viaplay has exited. Some of the things he pointed to were around Poland, I suppose, now entering the G20 top countries of economies, young demographic, attendance is up, making all the right noises about targeting an increase. And yeah, I asked him about competition. He explained a little bit about the production capacity that Ekstraklasa has had for a long time in-house, doing the host broadcast, and the building of a 25 million euro media centre and what it could all mean for prospective broadcasters, international broadcasters coming into Poland to the Ekstraklasa will hope create more competition for this contract. And here's what he said.
After 11 was sold to Polsat and Viaplay finished operation in Poland, the market is different. But what stays with us? First of all, still we have this concept to build the media center. It will be a cost around 20-25 million euros. We already have the land. The idea came from this league like Serie A, Premier League, or even the Danish league. Yeah. We visit their centers and we decided to build our own. Of course, we have production capabilities since 2011 with HD van, with 4K van, but we would like to upgrade. We would like to have also some remote production capabilities. We will have this all social media stuff to cut the materials as fast as possible, as many as possible for the youngsters. But also we will be able to have the studios like we did for Viaplay. So the possible newcomers will have the very designed and very well produced product from A to Z. And this is what we found out when we were talking with Disney, Amazon or beIN Sport. that sometimes if they don't have operational stuff on the site, they will be very happy to have the product ready to just plug in and transfer to streaming platforms, for example. And we see the room today that maybe some streaming platforms which are going also for other properties like LaLiga or Premier League or Bundesliga lately could come and cooperate with us as well.
Martin, it's nice to hear the Ekstraklasa CEO's thoughts about the upcoming tender, and also nice to hear the Sportel hubbub in the background. That's always entertaining, and it makes it sound like we're actually there in the moment, doesn't it? Joe, I think you had something to add about what's the latest news in Germany.
Yeah, one of the great things about Sportel, as we all know, is being able to chat to people from across the globe and find out what's going on in their parts of the world. And one of the things that struck me this year was how similar some of the challenges and opportunities broadcasters and rights holders are navigating are in different places. So, for example, in Germany and Australia, broadcasters and rights holders are lining up to find out what's going to happen after some pretty big changes in their pay TV markets. So in Germany, as we've mentioned on this podcast before, Sky Deutschland is in the final process of being sold to RTL. And interestingly, several of the people I spoke to this week were really enthused about the potential for that to shake up the free-to-air market. So their logic being that this is a big vote of confidence in sports in particular by RTL, and they think there could be healthy competition in the years ahead with ProSieben, which is now majority owned by Mediaset, as they battle for what is essentially the last remaining appointment TV. And as we know, appointment TV means much higher advertising returns. So that's something that's happening there. There's also some hope, and it might just be hope at this point, that having RTL and Sky offers the trinity that broadcasters and rights holders are looking for: a free-to-air exposure, a streaming service, and a pay television network to tap into. So rights holders, in theory, don't have to choose between reach and revenue if they get the right balance with RTL and Sky. That might just be optimistic and wishful thinking. Some of the other people I spoke to said it's not clear yet how RTL is planning to divide entertainment and sport, and the final product might be something pretty similar to what we have now, because RTL already has its own streaming service, which is RTL+. In Australia, meanwhile, the big pay TV change there is DAZN acquiring Foxtel. And again, there's some hope that that might shift the dynamic. The hope there in particular is that a big global player like DAZN, now having deep ties in Australia, might help open up some opportunities for Australian leagues around the world. Just this week, we've seen Foxtel's Rebecca McCloy appointed Chief Commercial Officer at DAZN. And there'll be some Australian leagues hoping that DAZN might be helpful in giving them a real global platform, because we know how popular those leagues are domestically, but we also know that it's always been a challenge to export them internationally, as what's coming across in Germany and Australia. And I know, John, you've been speaking to people in other parts of the world as well to find out what's going on with them.
Yeah, just want to come in on the Nordics, actually, because Joe's kind of painted quite a positive picture of competition in Germany and Australia and what's happening. And I think if you went to Sportel a couple of years ago, 3 years ago maybe, Nordics was the market everyone thought they could get a good deal in. And then, was it 2 years ago that Viaplay's results came out and the share price tanked? And it's been a recovery from them really since. And that's where that Nordic market is now. Talking to quite a few people, it is a really tough place now to get a good deal. Viaplay is coming back, as we said, their results are out this week. And they're still not particularly pretty. They are really focusing on sub-licensing and partnering with broadcasters in different markets in Sweden, Denmark, Norway on rights deals. So that's not always going to be driving the cost of the rights fees up. And then you've got Schibsted buying TV4. The changes there are slowly coming. So that is a market that people are slightly concerned about. And if you look to next year, you've got, and we talked about UC3 RFP, they're going to be going to the Nordics at some point. You've got the Premier League deal that's up in 28, I believe. Joe and I were talking to some people from the Nordics and Norway in particular, where the local league, they're expecting the Eliteserien tender to probably go next year. It runs to 28, the current deal, but they tend to go 2.5, 3 years out. So actually almost a little bit late. So, it's going to be a tough old market. And then you look at some leagues that have always had good coverage in the Nordics, someone like the Eredivisie, they're 3 months into the season. They don't have a deal at the moment. There's no TV deal there. And yet I had a quick look on Transfermarkt, there's 30 players from the Nordics playing in the Eredivisie, and there is no broadcaster at the moment there. So really is a market that was once flush with cash is now not.
Yeah, such a big change, the Premier League coming off that. I mean, it was a 6-year deal, I think, that was done. I suppose in that sense, they've maybe been cocooned a bit by having a deal that's kept them going for that long. But yeah, completely different market now in the Nordics. And also a real debate over how to pronounce I mean, we say Viaplay. The Nordics, they say Viaplay. And my Ekstraklasa interview, Marcin, I think, said Viaplay also. But maybe let's stick with Viaplay, given during their short dalliance in the UK, they stuck with Viaplay as how they pronounced it. So let's go with that.
Right. Well, I think it's time to look ahead to anything that we believe is going to be making ripples in the market. Martin, you had something about advertising, L-frame advertising that's coming over from North America to Europe. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's coming over in different respects. Next year, we'll be coming to the Six Nations, which I think is kind of interesting as part of the recent TV deals done in the UK and Ireland by the Six Nations from 2026 onwards. Broadcasters will have the ability to sell L-frame. And by L-frame, we mean literally in the shape of an L on the screen, where you can either publish advertising messages or a promo about a program that's coming up. We know it a bit more from, as you say, North America is used there. It's the kind of one that there'll be maybe some pushback against. I quite like it because, to be frank, when, if there's a reset scrum, which is when it would be used, it's downtime. I'm not particularly, as a viewer, bothered about an advertising message going up during that point. So yeah, why not? It'll either be used in the UK by ITV to its advertisers or to Six Nations sponsors. BBC, obviously, we're not going to have advertising. They will have the option if they want to say, watch Celebrity Traitors coming up after Scotland hammer England, Wales at Murrayfield maybe. So yeah, that will be coming up in the Six Nations, and also really interestingly, is part of the proposal for the Champions League rights going forward for the new cycle. Sponsors will be able to use L-frame advertising. I mean, according to the proposals that are out at the moment, anyway, the deals are still to be done, but that will also, if the deals are done that way, will affect Champions League broadcasts potentially in lots of markets around the world, and you will get that kind of US style advertising feel in the game. I imagine, during certain points during the game, when there's injuries, when there's the natural breaks in play, or if Rangers are playing, given how badly they've been playing, frankly, you can do it whenever you want, because I'd rather watch advertising than my team at the moment. But yeah, there we go. That was a nice little kind of, it was something we picked up on at Sportel, but something to look ahead to as a viewer and an industry observer next year, and in the case of Champions League, 2027.
But to be completely honest, the thing I am looking forward to the most this weekend is a good night's sleep, which I'm sure you can relate to, Catherine, having come all the way over from Vancouver. But this weekend also marks the start of a new era for my football team, Nottingham Forest. If Martin thinks Rangers are dysfunctional, Forest are now onto our third manager of the season. So I'll be keeping a close eye on the start of the Sean Dyche reign.
Well, that is something for you to look ahead to, Joe. Let's just take a quick look back at Sportel, and we're bringing you the first ever Sportel mini awards, or the Fringe Awards from Sportel. And these are our choices in a series of categories. And so my category is Best Recovery. And I'm not talking about recovering from the Irish bar the night before. The winner of this category is IMG. And that's referring to the party they had on the Monday night at the Meridian Beach Plaza Hotel. Now, last year, the party was held out on this lovely pool deck in the open air. There was Polynesian art, there were palm trees, and it was just a lovely, so you felt like you were in Tahiti. And they planned to do that this year, but the torrential rain on Monday morning flooded the venue, and they had to recover and hold it in what appeared to be almost like an aircraft hangar, a huge venue, but they managed to make it very friendly and cozy, and they had, there were hundreds of people in there, and they did a brilliant recovery job. It was packed, wonderful food, attentive hosts. So first prize to IMG. Well done for recovering from a natural disaster. Martin, I think you were looking at the best dressed category. Who takes the first prize there?
Yeah, I think for the 7th year running, well, not that we've done them before, but for the 7th year running, I think Augustine Tan at Peak Sport Media needs to get this award. Yeah, I saw him wearing a very dashing cream-coloured sort of checked, slightly tartan suit with some pumps. He was looking great. So yeah, hands down, Augustine Tan wins it, and we look forward to see what he'll be wearing at Monaco next year.
Best dressed, Augustine Tan. Now, John, I think you were looking at the best freebie category. Who wins your vote there?
Well, yeah, it's a difficult one because not everyone gives you a freebie. Yes, you've got Bundesliga and La Liga who give out their mini footballs. So there's always the sight of Sportel of middle-aged men stuffing little balls into bags. Sometimes they have to be deflated as well so you can get them home. That's important. So that was always a favourite. But actually, I'm going to give a shout out to MLB. Bit cheeky, really, but I did get a good cap, although I think they misjudged the size of my head. Maybe I've got a bigger head than I thought, but it's a fantastic... Their spread of caps were fantastic, so I've got a little cap that I might have to squeeze onto my head. So, yeah, best gift or best free tat. Well, it certainly wasn't tat. MLB, well done.
Can we have an additional award for the chocolates at the in-front stand, because they're always very good. They were good again this year. They were little red love hearts. The red, I believe, was a nod to the red in the in-front logo. And the red in the in-front logo was created after Wanda's acquisition of in-front, as red is a lucky colour in China. So, and we may, to be confirmed, and certainly something we're following, but certainly in-front could remain in Chinese hands going forward. One of the takeover proposals is from Boyu Capital, who, well, it is a Hong Kong-based firm, but a Chinese private equity firm based in Hong Kong with offices in Beijing. So the red chocolate may be back next year at Sportel. Let's see.
Well, moving right along with the category of food and snacks, our next category is best spread. Joe, you had something to offer there. Who's your pick?
Yeah, well, I sampled enough of them to be able to make an informed decision. Shall we start perhaps with a candidate that hasn't quite made the cut this year, which is Sportel itself? Now, at Sport Business, we're used to uncovering nuggets of information, but perhaps less used to uncovering chicken nuggets, which is what we were presented with for lunch on day one. Now, I'm sure our listeners' hearts are bleeding for us right now. But picture of a scene, you've got billions of dollars of purchasing power in one room, and lunch is chicken nuggets, sliced up hot dogs, and mozzarella sticks.
It certainly put the grim in Grimaldi.
But that aside, some great food was laid on for us pretty much everywhere we went, actually. John certainly made a few lemon meringues disappear at one stage. And as ever, when it comes to food, it's the Italians who win because there is no beating the giant cheese wheel at the Serie A party.
Right. Well, I think we've just about rounded up everything that we learned from Sportel over the last few days. I hope it's been informative and interesting to you all. And before we sign off for the week, we want to give a shout out to Matt Cutler, our fellow podcaster and former Sport Business colleague of all of us here on the podcast today. Matt's been struggling with some complicated health issues. His LinkedIn post explains it all. The nearly around 600 people now have interacted and close to 200 have commented personally on his struggles with his health. And from Sport Business here, we wish him the very best and we look forward to sharing the airwaves with him again. Matt, if you're listening, hang in there, mate. We're thinking of you and we're channeling our best wishes and support for you at this difficult time. And to finish, to our listeners, if you want to know more about today's stories or any of our other reports and analyses, and especially if you're looking for the world's largest collection of accurate rights fees across media and sponsorship, you know where to go. Take a look at subscription options on our website or get in touch with us via email at info@sportbusiness.com. And that's info@sportbusiness.com. And as always, if you enter the code SBPodcast30 at the checkout, you'll get a 30% discount on annual and monthly Sport Business subscriptions. Please don't forget to share your thoughts on this episode and give us your feedback in a review on the Apple Podcast and Spotify platforms. And you can also watch for our weekly LinkedIn posts promoting the podcast, where you can, of course, leave a comment. Thank you all for tuning in, for reading, and for subscribing. I'm Catherine Davies, and we'll be back again next week with the Sport Business Podcast.